All transitions have properties that you can adjust to customize how those transitions behave. Now, at first glance, it may seem kind of complicated because there are so many transitions in Premiere Pro, but really there's only a small set of properties, and each transition basically has some of those properties, like a subset of those properties. So if you just see all the various properties, then you get a sense of all the things that are available to you within all the various transitions. It may seem overwhelming at first, but really it's relatively straightforward. There aren't that many properties that any one transition can have, and there aren't that many properties altogether. Let me explain that briefly. You can change the duration of a transition, make it any length that you want, and you can adjust the alignment, meaning that it'll overlap the edit point, or it'll start or it'll end at the edit point. You have timeline controls when you can work inside the transition properties inside the Effect Controls panel. The controls allow you to fine-tune the adjustment of the placement, the duration, and the alignment of the transition. Some transitions can go in a certain direction, like from northwest to southeast, or left to right, or up and down. Or you can make transitions behave in reverse. You might have a curtain that opens or closes. One will be forward, one will be reverse. Some transitions have start and end points. Not many, but some allow you to have start and end points. I showed you that one transition in the previous lesson where the little circle started on the bird, then pulled back. That's a start point for that transition. Some transitions have borders, and the borders have characteristics like how wide is the border, what color is the border, and does it have anti-aliasing associated with it. And I'll explain anti-aliasing in this lesson. And finally, some transitions have custom features. Nothing really dramatic. It might be just a number, like how many bands or how many bars or how many boxes, something like that. So that's a rundown on all the features that could possibly be in any one single transition. Each transition has its own subset of these properties. I'm going to show you some examples. To follow along with this demonstration, go to Working Files, Projects, 0802 Transition Properties. So this project might look familiar to you. This is the one I used in the previous lesson where I showed you some examples of transitions. And in this lesson, I'm just going to demonstrate some of the properties. In the next lesson, I'll show you how to apply transitions. And in the one after that, I'll show you details about how to adjust these properties. So let's start off by going to this last sequence, this Set a Mood sequence. I've got a bunch of transitions here. If I click on a transition, I select it just as I would select a clip. You can tell it's selected because it gets darker like that. And when you select a transition, you can then see the transition's properties if you go to the Effect Controls panel. Clicking on that tab will show that transition's properties. Let me move the current time indicator to that transition because right now this selected transition is here, but the video is over here and they're not really lined up. So move the current time indicator to that transition so we have the two things together there. Putting the current time indicator within this transition. This is the transition that's currently selected, and it's showing up here in the Effect Controls panel. Notice that it says Set a Mood. That's the name of the sequence. It says Set a Mood here. And it says Cross Dissolve, the name of the transition that's there. Here are the properties of this transition. Remember, all transitions have a subset of all the possible properties, and there aren't that many. The two obvious ones are duration and alignment. All transitions have duration and alignment, and the duration by default is 1 second. You can change the default duration inside the preferences. The alignment is always centered at the cut, meaning that the transition overlaps the cut there. That's the default way things are set up. This little timeline view here is also part of the controls that you have inside the Effect Controls panel when you're working in a transition. If it's not visible for some reason, and the default view is that it should be visible, if it's not, then click on this little triangle to open it up. That's how you open it up right there, the little dotted triangle there. And it'll open up that little timeline. There you go. The timeline is a representation of how transitions work. It's kind of the old school approach to transition back in film days. They literally had two rolls of film, an A roll and a B roll. And you would transition from the A roll down to the B roll and then back again later. And then transition went between the two. As you rolled the two rolls of film at the same time, you would just gradually transition from one to the next. And this graphically shows how your transition lays out. From a little bit before the edit point is right there, that black line. And then there's the transition there. And then we go from the A down to the B. A little bit below here, there's a thing that says Show Actual Sources. Right now it's this A-B look. But it's, I think, a better thing to do to have those guys turned on. So I just turn it on, and now it'll be on for all other transitions as well, not just this transition. If I click over to another one, you'll see that it will now be on for all of them. That's one of those things that is set inside the software as opposed to set inside the transition. All right, well, there aren't very many properties to the cross dissolve. It's just how long is the thing, and is it centered at the cut or not? A custom start means that it's just been slid over to one side or the other as opposed to put at the cut that way. It's just kind of adjusted slightly. Now if I go here, you'll see that it says custom start when I've moved it around a bit like that. So that's it for cross dissolve. Let's move on to this first one, change place or time, where I've got this doors opening transition. If I click on it, it's called doors, and the name of the sequence is change place or time. There are a few more properties here, and I mentioned, the properties are a subset of all the possible properties. If I look at this one, it says the direction of the motion. Right now it's going west to east or east to west, but in fact it's just doors opening up, so there really is no west to east. It's just either opening up left to right or sideways, and then it's top to bottom. I could change it such that they open a different way, like that. I can have them open like that, or I can change them to go sideways. So that's an option in terms of the direction. I can also say go in reverse. So reverse is on now. Rather than having them sort of open to the next scene, I have the next scene appear on top. That's the normal direction. It's reversed to have them open up, like the way I did it here. In addition, they have a border. When you have a border, you can set the width of the border. So the border looks like so. That's how wide the border is in terms of pixels, picture elements, little dots. You set the color. I can get the color from the scene. I can change it to white, for example. Or I can get the color from a color swatch, like so. I like to grab it from the scene, because that way the colors really match. There's a thing called anti-aliasing. If you look at the diagonal lines here and get in really close, I'll get in really close for you. I'll zoom in to, let's say, 200%. I'll scroll up to that little diagonal line here. Just 1 second. Scroll over to it. There you go. You see it's got this kind of jaggedy edge to it. Right now, anti-aliasing smooths the jagged edges. It's kind of reverse thinking. Anti-aliasing is off, so why don't they just call it aliasing? I don't know, but it's anti-aliasing and it's off. If I turn it on to high quality, for example, it smooths it out like that, so it's not such a jagged edge, but it does kind of up the ante in terms of making your processor work a little bit harder. Nevertheless, there you go. Let's just see how that works. If it goes by kind of quickly, you might not notice that it's soft, but there you go. That's what anti-aliasing is all about. When I go to the similar scenes one, I have the shot of the bird here, where I had the iris transition. The iris transition has a start point, this little circle here. So I can start the transition here. I can watch it on screen here and see that it's on the bird. And maybe I want to actually move it a little bit so it's on the bird's head, like that. So like that. So you can have a start or end point. Not many transitions have this, but the iris transitions, it's a group of transitions, tend to have these little circles that let you start or end the transition at a certain place in the screen. Some transitions have custom elements. Let me go find a transition that has a custom element by going down to Effects, Video Transitions. Go down here a little bit to the Zoom. Then go get the Zoom boxes, and I'll replace this guy with Zoom boxes. Not something I would recommend generally but for this particular setting, but I want to show this example. If you scroll down a bit on this one, you'll see that it has a button that says Custom. A few transitions have this little custom button. You click on it, and it gives you some kind of change that you can make. I'll cancel for now to show you what this effect looks like. There's those little boxes like that, right? So I can change the number of boxes, basically. It's not a big deal. It's nothing very difficult to do. We can see how many boxes we want. That many, this many, like so. So we'll just change it like that. And then that change shows up there inside your transition, like that. So those are the various properties and controls that you can see in transitions, keeping in mind that all transitions have some subset of all those properties. We're going to go over how to apply transitions in the next lesson, and then go over the details about how to adjust the properties in the lesson after that.